Your favorite tech companies are lying to you. Every single one of them. Hello and welcome to another video. As usual, my name is Jeffrey. If you're new, this is Inquisitive Universe, where we talk about everything and anything that has to do with smartphones. You're welcome, and I hope you stay. My target for the year, yes, I've given myself a target, is 1,000 subscribers by December. Hopefully I get there, but let's see how it goes. You are central to that, so please stay. Thank you. So let's get on with the video. Tech companies are lying to you. Every single one of them are. Every single one of them, no matter your because there's always brand identity. I've made a video about, like, you know, brands and like brand loyalty and all that. Probably you could find it somewhere up there, I don't know. But your favorite brands and your favorite tech companies are all lying to you, every single one. And why? They're a business, and they're a business, they have to make profits, and a lot of them take this profit making they knock the ball out of the park, to use a baseball reference. They knock the ball out of the park, straight out of the park. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking about how your favorite tech companies are all lying to you. I'm going to try to abstain from like mentioning straight names, but I'm sure that like those people who are conversant with happenings in the tech world will get these references. So let's start off. Okay, so to kick off, benchmarks. Yes, benchmarks. I know lots of people do not rate benchmarks. Like, there's all these people who are talking about, let's get the phone in hand first. Let's operate it that way. That way I can use my my layman subjective sense of reasoning to know that phone A is more powerful than phone B. Yeah. You come across people like that a lot of the time. And whilst like the mentality is slowly changing over time, benchmarks are still key. Now, benchmarks are based on real-life tests on how a phone, keyword being based on real-life tests on how a phone should perform with certain tasks. I mean, they are synthetic tasks, but then again, that's basically what it is, right? So benchmarks are important, and they help not just like, you know, people choose phones. They also help, you know, like tech people rate phones, and then it's easier to be able to give out like smartphone advice, or to be able to rank phones against each other to see which one is, like, you know, more powerful or more optimized for tasks based on benchmarks. And tech companies know this, because it's actually kind of funny when I see like lay people talk about how specs are not important, but the companies that make these phones, they know otherwise. They don't even, I'm not saying think, they actually do know otherwise, and they take steps to make sure that benchmarks are favorable to them. Many companies outrightly cheat on benchmarks. They outrightly cheat on benchmarks. Now, I'm like I said, I'm going to avoid mentioning the names of companies. If not, I can start rolling names off the tip of my tongue right here, off the tip of my tongue. But companies cheat at benchmarks. The latest scandal was it's still benchmark cheating regardless. The latest scandal involves, like, you know, one of the top three, right? In fact, two of the top three, if we're to be honest, two of the top three in the smartphone world, who, like, basically the chipset. Like the current flagship Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset is a pressing iron, right? So it's hot, really, it's hot. And these companies know that if they push this chipset, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 at max power, then essentially the phone is going to be hot consistently, so much so that the inbuilt cooling measures that have been put there won't be able to stem the tide of the heating. So what did they do? They wanted to make sure that the chipset will perform at max power when running benchmarks, but it will not run at max power when, like, in normal day-to-day use. So basically, they throttled, or like when you say throttled, they limited the performance of the chipset for day-to-day tasks, and then let it run wild with benchmarks. So that is a form of benchmark cheating, no matter how much you want to explain it, no matter how much you want to put it, because it's false advertising, right? So if you're going to want you want people to know that a chipset runs at so and so performance, but they are not going to have access to that sort of performance. It's false advertising. So that's one way companies lie. The next one that they do, which is also very, very common, especially amongst companies that are competing or jostling for shares in the mid-range market and in the lower-end market, but you can also find it up there in the upper mid-range and flagship segment, is Misrepresenting Specs. Now, one of my favorite companies from Nigeria are very fond of doing this. Like I said, I'm avoiding mentioning names. they love doing this a lot. Now, once upon a time, they released their flagship phone with a 64 megapixel camera that is supposed to rival the 64 megapixel camera from another Chinese company, which was like new then in the country, was immediately gaining ground and eating up shares, right? They're eating up shares in the market. Now, what they did not tell people was this: their so-called 64 megapixel camera ran on a Helio P25 or was it P35 chipset that maxed out for camera support at 25 megapixels. So how do you put 64 megapixels on a 25 megapixel chipset or 25 megapixel capable chipset? Your guess is as good as mine. And of course, the pictures did not, the phone didn't churn out at 64 megapixel photo quality. Of course not. I mean, they tried to paint it and mask it with the software and all that, but people with keen eyes for how pictures should look immediately spotted it, and it became a bit of a joke, right? So these are some of the many ways like companies could tell you about how they have a certain battery size, like on their phone, but they would not tell you that the components that they use to make the phone are either old, have huge nanometer sizes, or are just basically power hungry. So you see people buy devices of 6,000 milliampere per hour or 7,000 milliampere per hour batteries that run on old Helio chipsets, for example, that are power hungry. They misrepresent specs. You see somebody has somebody wants to meet up and they say, hey, we have a 108 megapixel camera on top of a 64 megapixel capable SoC with poor image processing. So these companies will continue misrepresenting specs. They will. They know specs are important, and they will continue misrepresenting them for the clueless public to buy. Now, in the early days of this channel, I made kind of like a joke video. It was just something that I enjoyed doing. I woke up one night and I just decided I should make this. I was interviewing myself basically. I was playing both parts, and when it got to the point of it was a phone launch, and they asked the guy dude, how far? Where's the picture for this phone you're launching? And the guy was like, put a DSLR picture there. But it was actually a joke, right? But it was a joke that has roots in reality. A lot of the pictures that a big Chinese giant has been caught doing this. Like a lot of the pictures that they tout for advertising are actually taken by proper professional grade cameras, and they try to make it seem as if, oh, one of my favorite companies in Nigeria is also fond of doing this. If you go through their websites for their phones that they advertise, and you scroll down and then you see these moving pictures and then you see the quality and you're like, oh wow, buy the phone first and take pictures with it and see what happens. So yeah, that's self-explanatory. I really don't need to go much further on that one. Sales figures are another way where companies lie, and they tell you that we have sold a certain million number of phones. Even my favorite does it. They do it and tell you we sold several millions of phones. We sold such wow, they wow people with sales figures, and everybody gets wild and like, wow, these phones are flying off the shelf. Not really. Why do I say so? Now, these companies do not know if these phones are actually sold or not. The only thing they know is the number of phones that they've shipped to wholesale or retail people, like the wholesalers or the retailers that come to buy from their warehouses, or they have to ship over, to these different retail outlets around the world. Phones shipped do not instantly translate into phones sold. There are probably some people who have shipped over 10 million phones, and 8 million, presumably, could be sitting on shelves somewhere in the world, gathering dust. But they could be, the company could be celebrating that we've shipped 10 million phones, so therefore we sold 10 million phones. That's actually not true. Phones shipped do not translate into phones sold. That's one way that companies tend to lie a lot. And finally, let's just look at rebranding. Yes. This is actually laziness on the part of most companies, when they rebrand. Many companies do it. Companies that have different, what's the word to use now? Different subgroups or sub-companies for different regions, right? So they sell one phone in one region and don't want to make it seem as if they're selling the same phone in another region. So what they usually do is they rebrand. They change the packaging. They change the name. But it's still the same internals that are inside. Maybe what they'll do is maybe they'd remove one camera and add in one new feature or stuff, but essentially it's still the same phone, basically. So they rebrand a lot. It's basically laziness on their part, but I don't know, is that really a lie? Yeah, they should just simply say it's the same phone. What's the point of like coming out in the media and saying our new phone when we all know the phone is not new. Like, that's the more excusable aspect of it. One of my favorite companies at home here takes rebranding to the extreme. Like, you could like they could simply, like, you know, they could, I don't know, they haven't really done it of recent, which is actually like a good thing, but they could have like a phone for this year, let's say 2022 now, they could have a phone this year, and basically they won't change anything, they won't, sometimes they may not even change the design, they just like move the phone over to 2023, probably next year, right, for example, and then give it a new name, which is actually quite sad. And lots of people caught up to that trick that they did, and even though they're no longer as complacent with it as they used to do, but be sure that they are still doing it one way or another. So that's it for this video. The comments are always very, very welcome. Please tell me what you think about these videos, and if I should keep making videos like this, or if I should swap, because this channel is viewer oriented. I want to make stuff, I want to talk about stuff, or bear my expertise on things that people want to hear, that people are looking for solutions for. That's what I'm all about. So please do make sure, if you're new here, like, subscribe, leave a comment. My name is Jeffrey, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.